know why they have that many subscribers, because they put a lot of effort into their videos. YouTube is such a beautiful thing. Like the fact that I can watch a 30-minute documentary on the subtext of Ocarina of Time or God of War being untangled, then listen to like a sick music video, watch an hour documentary on a man in a cave, then watch a fucking podcast with PewDiePie, or watch an insect tier list, or watch a video about why we don't shoot nuclear waste into space, or listen about how a Pokemon champ did at Worlds. YouTube's crazy. I kind of want to watch this. Maybe I should wait to watch this, though. Nah, let's watch it now.
Comes to the storytelling devices of the 9th and 10th century Vikings, Loki was a primary one, as the god of mischief's lust for conflict was often used as the tool to shake up the natural order of things. Loki's actions were responsible for the feuds and even deaths of many gods and giants, creation of the cosmos' greatest monsters, and is seen leading the charge against the gods of Asgard during the final battle at the end of everything, Ragnarok. The etymology of his name points to the Germanic word "lok," which denoted things to do with loops, like knots or locks. He is the character that tangles plots and complicates relationships. Renowned master of Norse myths, Kevin Crossley Holland, writes
Dude,
that
streaming is so funny. I won't pause too much in this, I promise. But streaming's funny because someone just said W camera move. Because I moved my camera, made it a little smaller. That's funny.
that without the
All right, learning about God of War in preparation.
exciting, unstable, flawed figure of Loki, there could be no change in the fixed order of things, no quickening pulse, and no Ragnarok.
I mean, that's all good stories, right? All good stories need an agent of change, because that's the whole thing that happens in stories is something changes. Otherwise, you just end up with slice of life anime, and then you become a fucking weeb.
Loki is the catalyst for change in Norse mythology, and so any attempt to remove him from the stories would require an enormous amount of rerouting of the events to cover up the holes left in his absence. And yet, this is exactly what the writing team over at Santa Monica Studios have managed to achieve in their original Norse-based adventure colossus, God of War.
Look at that. It's Thor.
Thor, god of thunder.
That's right. I never thought you listened when Mother spoke of the gods.
I seldom did.
God of War's story follows Kratos, an ex-general demigod from Sparta, and his son Atreus, as they take the ashes of Kratos' late wife and mother to Atreus, Faye, to the highest peak in all the realms.
This is incredible!
The journey pushes and pulls the two all across the cosmology of Norse myth, where they encounter almost the entire pantheon of Norse characters.
It's the world serpent. He's so much bigger than I imagined.
But while there is a special emphasis placed on the discovery and
Didn't they not? Isn't the whole thing about the first God of War that they didn't get to like the pantheon members that mattered? Like you don't talk to Odin, you don't talk to Thor. I guess you can't talk to Loki, but
retelling of these ancient Norse stories, the myths are being sent off in directions different to the source material. And this is because the character of Loki has been completely removed from the mythology, leaving no trace or mention of him anywhere throughout the story. That is, until the very end.
All these drawings. This is our story.
At the end of the journey, in the great twist before the credits roll, Atreus learns for the first time the name given to him by Faye, his mother.
I guess there's just one thing I don't understand. My name on the wall. The giants called me Loki?
Loki.
This moment, being the first and only time the name Loki is used throughout the journey, suddenly highlights the removal of it in the story. Because Loki is only a child in God of War, the comings and goings of adult Loki from the myths are naturally non-existent yet, and this leaves sizable holes in the architecture of the mythology. And yet, this new mythology doesn't collapse. And this is because the God of War team filled the gaps with myths that have been reinvented to accommodate for Loki's removal. But the God of War writers don't just fill the gaps and walk away. When comparing these reinvented myths with the original texts, we begin to see that the writers are actively using this reinvented mythology to help them land a much larger story goal.
You were just an animal.
It's a long and twisted thread full of knots and loopholes, but by untangling God of War's mythological tapestry,
You will never change.
we see the full picture.
Dude, I feel like mythology is one of the greatest stories ever, like the humans ever wrote. I used to be obsessed with Greek mythology. I bought like anthologies of all the stories of Greek mythology. I never really got into Norse mythology, though. I don't know why. Is that a Westerner thing? Well, I guess this is also still Western. Is it an American thing to be more into Greek mythology than Norse? I mean, it might literally be because of Percy Jackson. That might literally be the only good reason. I think it's actually just Percy Jackson went brr. All we had were stories back then. I mean, that's fair. I bet there were reactors back then, though. You know what I mean? Like, I bet there were people who would tell stories, orators, you know, the greats, Homer and whatever. But then there'd be like this dude, I don't know, named like Ludwig, who would react to Homer's stories, and he'd have really good reactions. Like, Homer would be up there telling his story, and he'd be like, and then the Odyssey continued onto the islands of mermaids. And then Ludwig would cut him off and be like, yo, dude, you think that if there were mermaids that you would bite? Do you think you would crack on mermaids? And he would pause Homer from finishing it? There were probably reactors back then. Chat? Yeah, like the listeners back in the day. There could have been a Ludwig in Greece. Don't count me out.
Norse myth already has a complicated history, as almost everything we know about it comes down to only these two manuscripts, the Eddas, namely the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda. Unlike the Greeks with their thoroughly documented mythology, or the thousands of manuscripts on the New and Old Testaments, the Vikings never wrote anything down, and so all we've been granted are a scattering of Viking poems that have miraculously found their way down through the centuries. The Poetic Edda, also known as the Codex Regius or King's Book, was unearthed in 1643, but dates back to being written 400 years earlier. Judging by subtle time period inconsistencies in the text,
Wait, I feel like there's a way more info on Norse mythology if you just watch like a Marvel movie.
the Codex Regius is actually thought to be a copy of an
Like, where does Thor Love and Thunder fit in this? Because I feel like that's kind of canon in a lot of ways. Am I?
original manuscript written sometime around the beginning of the 13th century, which has never been found. The Prose Edda, on the other hand, is the important work of Norwegian chieftain and scholar Snorri Sturluson, who in roughly 1220 compiled the second manuscript to help those interested better understand the unique poetic techniques used in these poems. In his book, The Viking Spirit, independent scholar Daniel McCoy writes that, like any other scholar, Snorri was all too human, sometimes misinterpreting sources and filling gaps in the narrative with his own imagination. This was done in the groping attempt to make the Norse beliefs seem closer to those of Christianity, which at that point was the local religion after the Christianization of Europe began 2 centuries earlier, resulting in heavy debate over the storytelling purity of the texts. And so from these two sources, time-worn manuscripts containing many contradictions, loopholes, and missing pieces, we have most of what makes up all modern knowledge of Norse mythology. The
Damn.
God of War team do a good job at honoring the pieces that do exist from the incomplete Norse myth jigsaw. But this isn't to say that these pieces aren't rearranged to serve the narrative goals of their story, which is to ultimately
Play
provide
the
a
game
world
Saturday.
that encourages transformation
Hattie.
for the protagonists.
Stop it!
Again! You are clearly not ready.
Both Kratos and Atreus are broken characters at the start of the story.
What are you doing? Now his guard is up.
Much like the Eddas, Kratos has a complicated and damaged history, and this secret past manifests into parenting philosophies that grate against Atreus' natural posture for compassion.
I can't.
But for better or worse, these two opposing forces of pride and compassion slowly begin to crack the other.
You were teaching him how to be a god, and he was kind of, in turn, teaching Kratos how to be a human being.
This noxious combination results in a father and son story full of destruction and betrayal.
I still think
but
it's
with
hype.
the
He got
aid of the
rage and
adventure
then passed
world
out.
around them and the reinvented Norse myths that come attached to it, the two are guided towards a realm of healing. As we're about to see, the God of War writers used this new Loki absent mythology to double down hard on three primary themes that help Kratos and Atreus in their transformation.
Do you think they'll just make, after this God of War, a God of War for, like, I don't know, like Egyptian mythology? Because that shit also goes deep, right? I guess they had it in the comics. They want to do Egyptian. Imagine they do Christianity. And it's just Kratos giving Jesus Christ the hands. Comes back in the sequel. 3 sequels later. That would piss people off.
But the force helping to push this transformation along is the altered story arc of God of War's antagonist, Baldur.
Is Baldur a
thought
big
you'd be
deal in
bigger.
Norse mythology? I thought he was like kind of a nobody.
But you're definitely the one. Long way from home, aren't you?
Baldur, thanks to Loki, is supposed to be dead. This legend starts in a poem called Voluspa in the Poetic Edda, is fleshed out more in Baldur's dreams, and given even more detail in the Prose Edda's The Death of Baldur. After hearing about Baldur's nightmares which prophesy his death, Baldur's mother, Freya, personally requests an oath from all things to never harm her son. Every rock, tree, mountain, river, virus, animal, and being across the 9 realms agree.
What?
All except mistletoe. Considering mistletoe to be too young and innocent a vine, Freya skips it.
It is impressive that everyone agreed on that. I did a vote on do you like cookies in chat once. 85% of people agreed. That's impressive.
But after learning of this and crafting an arrow from some nearby mistletoe, Loki convinces Baldur's blind brother Hoth to throw it at Baldur during a game where the other gods put Baldur's new immortality to test. Believing he is part of the game, Hoth throws the arrow and Baldur drops dead.
That tree, which seemed harmless, caused a terrible sorrow when Hoth took a shot.
The beginning of this tale remains completely intact in God of War, in that Baldur does become immortal thanks to the oaths Freya collects.
That's inconvenient.
But due to adult Loki's removal, Baldur still lives.
Like, the fact that it was mistletoe that was his one weakness, and they were in, like, the northern parts of Europe, and mistletoe existed there is so inconvenient. Because what if the cactus said no? He's just good. He's money. He's never going to run into one. So that's just a little unlucky, honestly.
I want you to know one thing. I can't feel any of this.
You've seen it with your own eyes. You can't hurt me. Nothing can.
The trajectory of Baldur's character, a god still unable to feel anything, has become one that is twisted by revenge. His mother's blessing now seen as a lifelong curse.
You had no right.
I had every right. I am your mother.
You had no right, witch. I can't taste. I can't smell, I can't even feel the temperature of this room.
Death has no power over you now. You would rather die?
Never feel again? Yes. I would rather.
I'm Team Balder. I think Balder should have been allowed to die.
You deny it all you want, but you saved me, and that deserves compensation.
But curiously, mistletoe arrows do still find their way into the story.
What are these?
Braided mistletoe arrows, straighter than Heimdall and perfectly weighted.
Oh. Thanks?
Your quiver.
Strap broke when we fought the dragon.
Pain we endure. Faulty weaponry we do not. Good?
Wait. Where did you get those? The arrows. Give them to me, now. These arrows are dangerous. They're wicked. You find any more, you destroy them, understand?
Freya herself hints towards this mistletoe secret, but in an interesting twist of events, it is still Loki in a mistletoe arrow that is responsible for Balder's demise.
No! No! Atreus!
What is that? I can feel this. I can feel everything.
Is this related to kissing under mistletoe, or is that completely unrelated?
He's vulnerable now?
By repositioning this mistletoe arrow event, Balder and Freya's relationship is given a chance to play out, and the exploration
Kratos kisses him. Kratos is like, oh, now it's my fucking time.
of these relationships is the first reason for the reinvention of the myths. In order to spark change in Kratos and Atreus, the Santa Monica team surround them with a community of different relationships to learn from. The curious part, though, is that it's a community of broken relationships.
Guess I shouldn't be surprised. I did the same thing to my dad when I was his age.
He killed his own father?
From fathers, mothers, brothers, and sons, every single supporting character suffers from a family matter.
Oh, I can tell you a thing or two about family matters.
The two dwarf brothers, Brock and Sindri, are caught in a feud. These two characters are from a chapter in the Prose Edda, which involves Loki and the dwarf brothers in a contest to see who can design the greatest Asgard treasures.
Who are the big dogs in Norse? I only know Odin, Loki, and Thor. Do they have a third brother? Tyr? Not falling for that. You think I'm dumb as hell. I'm not falling for that. Tear off these pants and come get, you know what I mean? I'm not falling for it. Freya. Yeah, I know Freya's in this one. Look up Tyr. I watched one interview because I know Tyr is a big part of the new God of War because it's called God of War Ragnarok, and he's the God of War of Norse mythology. And I watched one like IGN interviews, North mythologist, and the guy's like, yeah, Tyr's just not a God of War. He's just not. I don't know why they're calling him that. And I was like, oh, okay.
This includes Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, which makes an appearance right at the end of the story, and Freya's boar with golden whiskers, which makes an appearance when the two meet her in the forest.
The last of his kind in all the realm, and you shoot him.
While always seen working together in the Eddas, the dwarf brothers are navigating a damaged relationship in God of War after, according to a deciphered God of War cloth map, each forgot the location of an important treasure, which is an addition to the material. Another broken family unit is found in Thor and his sons, Modi and Magni, who are caught in a bitter competition between each other and their father after Magni gets all the praise for saving Thor when Magni was only 3 days old. This event is relatively accurate to the text and is found in the Prose Edda during the story of Thor and the giant Hrungnir. who falls on Thor after his stone head is smashed in by Thor's own hammer.
Magni, being Launder, got all the credit, and Modi remained bitter about it from that day to the end.
But Modi's involvement is an addition to the myth, as he's never mentioned in the Prose Edda, and this is used to explore the sons' terrible relationship with their father,
No!
which is given special attention in the story after Kratos kills Magni.
Thor, blame me. Me for what you did to Magni. My own father called me a coward.
Looks like he did more than that.
Damn! Bro, Atreus pisses me off. He's a little fucking brat sometimes.
For Kratos, all of these broken family events are designed to help him find his true north when it comes to being both a decent parent and a human being.
I know he kills him there.
It's like being fed bad food to remind us why we want good food.
Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. But there is one unavoidable truth you will never escape. You cannot change.
I know you're a god. Not of this realm, but there's no mistaking it. He doesn't know, does he? About your true nature? Or his own?
The lie that Kratos believes is that controlling the truth is a strength. But just like how Freya's overprotection backfires on her relationship with Balder, Kratos' attempt at withholding the truth that both he and Atreus are gods slowly begins to unravel the further the two push into the adventure.
Atreus.
Kratos' withholding of the truth begins to bleed into the physical world, becoming a poison that infects Atreus from the inside out.
That seems like too convenient of a plot point. I think a lot of the plot points in God of War 4 are great. I think it's a well-written story. The fact that lying makes the man sick seems like a convenient thing that mothers around the globe would pray to be true. It's like an old wives' tale.
What is happening to him?
I've seen it in mortals that some conflict of the mind expresses itself as an ailment of the body. Never in a god, but a god believing himself mortal. I can only imagine.
At this point, Kratos is faced with his first real emotional trial, as he comes face to face with the realization that the only way to save his son is by letting the truth free.
I can break the fever, but to heal...
He must know the truth of what he is.
Yes.
It is not so simple.
The second theme in God of War is one that hangs like a cloud over Kratos' battle with the truth. And again, the writers use Loki's removal to summon this theme up to the surface for everyone to see.
It's Skadi. Mother liked her. A great huntress.
The best example of this is the story Mimir retells regarding the shape-shifting giant Thiazi and his daughter Skadi. According to the Prose Edda, Loki was blackmailed by Thiazi in his eagle form into bringing him the goddess Ithune and her apples of youth. But through Loki's trickery, leads Thiazi into Asgard, where he's killed by the gods with fire.
The holy gods soon built the fire.
That's a pretty shit trick. All things considered, if your trick ends in someone being burned and murdered, don't say classic Loki. Like and don't do troll face either. That's not like a prank. It's not a prank. All right? It's like a prank who are those YouTubers Sam and Colby would do. I pranked my friend into thinking that I was burned by arrows alive after I took the form of an eagle.
They shaved off kindlings and the giant was scorched.
Seeking revenge for her father's death, Skadi storms into Asgard. But as a sign of goodwill, Odin grants her 2 wishes before placing the eyes of her father in the heavens to shine like stars until Ragnarok. But without adult Loki in existence, this event in God of War plays out very differently. After Odin's marriage proposal to Skadi is refused, he tricks her into killing an eagle rumored to be hunting for Ithune and her apples. Excited to prove her incredible hunting abilities, Scarthy finds and shoots the eagle.
When she collected her quarry, she found no eagle at all. But her own father, poor Theotzi, slain by his own daughter.
This reinvention is used to drive home the second theme that cycles around again and again.
Killing parents.
Not just in this God of War story, but in the entire series of stories. A child who kills their parent.
The cycle ends here.
This theme plays directly into Kratos' complicated history of killing his own father Zeus, which is replayed later in a vision for both protagonists as a reminder of the decisions Kratos is trying to leave behind.
Come on, we gotta go!
You saw.
This family cycle of betrayal, also known as the cycle of patricide, is a family curse that passes down from father to son, beginning all the way back at Kratos' grandfather, Kronos, who, according to Greek mythology, betrayed his own father, Uranus, who then cursed his entire family line to follow in the same fate.
She was overcome with grief and shame, for there is nothing
Well, to be fair, Kratos did eat Zeus and his brothers because he was afraid that his sons would kill him. To be fair. Kronos. Not Kratos.
So reviles as a child who kills their parent.
Kratos comes from a history where compassion is seen as a weakness, and this is why he rejects Atreus.
Why not just kill your kid then? That's how you stop the curse. See, I'm fucking 5 steps ahead of this. If I was Kratos, I find myself young Loki, snap the fucking neck, curse is done. They tried? Who tried? Oh, Kronos tried to kill Zeus. Yeah, but he didn't have like a shit-eating grin of a son named Atreus. Like, Atreus was killable for sure. I guess that is the whole point of every game, is that they do try, though. Actually, no, good point.
The boy has been cursed.
But ultimately, Kratos withholds the truth about his history in the vain hope that it will help reroute his fate.
Don't leave without me.
I will not.
At this point, we see that things have begun to change, as Atreus' compassion has shifted the way that Kratos views the world, and by using Kratos' own son, the writers force Kratos to make an uncharacteristic choice in favor of a healthy relationship.
The truth. The truth.
Yeah?
I'm a god, boy. From another land far from here. When I came to these shores, I chose to live as a man. But the truth is, I was born a god. And so were you.
But it's here, at the storytelling junction point, that the writers flip the roles of the characters.
I think I'm gonna like being a god.
Kratos is beginning to let go of control, right as Atreus begins to weaponize the truth about his godhood.
I can tell you a thing or two about family matters.
Let me guess. Your brother isn't as talented as you, and his work is junk.
Those things are accurate. Your point?
It's all you ever talk about, over and over. Do something about it or shut up already. We're sick of hearing about little people's little problems.
Funny to say that when you're sitting at like 4'9".
Why did you speak to the dwarf like that?
Not the best parenting moment right there. You kind of doubled down on his sentiment. If it's little people's little problems, then you say, why are you talking to the dwarf like that? Like, come on. You know? You're kind of...
You should know the truth, even if it hurts.
It was needless and unkind.
Truth is more important than kindness.
This line of truth being more important than kindness sums up the struggle that begins to boil between the two protagonists, as Atreus begins to place his godhood status above others. But the way the writers guide both Kratos and Atreus through this fog of morality is by telling stories about two other important yet invisible characters whose deeds are the subject of much discussion.
Guys, stop saying he's literally a dwarf, okay? It's a little hurtful.
Throughout the adventure, Tyr, the god of war from Norse mythology, and the vicious Allfather, Odin.
Odin's ways are subtle and his purposes are...
Enough about Odin and his whole stupid family.
These two characters are used to establish the moral compass for the story, a very clear north and south polarization of how to use godhood, which is a storytelling philosophy foreign to the mythos, as the Vikings' pantheon is more or less an amoral one. But the fancy footwork of the writers can't be overstated here, as while Odin and Tyr's legacies also haven't escaped the ripple effect of Loki's removal, the point of their rerouting traces back to the same single detail the writers change in the mythology, a detail that, while not involving Loki directly, involves the grisly world of Loki's children.
Did he have a lot of kids? He seems like someone who fuck around.
In Norse myth, Loki is the father and mother of...
I'm sorry, what now? He's the father and what? Mother?
Many monster children, and most of them appear in God of War, but at varying degrees of importance. On the Jormungandr shrine, Loki's entire family appears here in the oldest Viking rune alphabet, Elder Futhark, including Loki himself, next to his wife Angrboda, followed by their 3 children, the first being Hel, the half-girl, half-corpse child, who in the myths is sent by Odin to watch over the realm of the same name, and the second being Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, who is very much physically present in God of War.
That came out of Loki's penis? Oh, this guy badass.
Thanks to being sent back in time during his cosmic battle with Thor during Ragnarok, which is an addition to the myths.
What else did the serpent tell you when you spoke? Kinda sounded important.
I'm sure it's nothing. He just said the boy seemed familiar to him.
Me?
But it's Loki's third monster child on the mural, Fenrir, aka Fenris Wolf, the ever-growing wolf giant, whose legacy in the Eddas impacts the destinies of both Odin and Tyr.
Just knowing we're gods makes me feel so much stronger.
Maybe you feel a little too good right now. With power comes a big choice, lad. You can either serve yourself or put your godhood in the service of others, like Tyr did.
According to the Prose Edda, Tyr was the only god brave enough to feed the wolf after Odin and the gods agreed to raise it in Asgard. But upon seeing how quickly Fenrir was growing in size, Odin convinces the other gods to bind him in case he turned on them. After 2 failed attempts to bind him with regular chains, Odin turned to the dwarves, who by using an unusual group of ingredients created the unbreakable fetter, Gleipnir. Fenrir accepted the third challenge of being bound by Gleipnir on the condition that one god placed their hand in his mouth to be chomped off if he could not escape. And Tyr, knowing full well that his hand would be sacrificed, agreed.
What? Fenrir agreed to get chained up if he could have a god's arm in his mouth so that he could eat the arm if he couldn't escape. So he was like Houdini, and he was like, yeah, put me in your fucking biggest, chainiest straitjacket. I'll get out of that shit. But if I don't, I get a little bit hungry, and I would love a little snack because maybe I'll not be able to get out. I feel like it's because, yeah, he's the ever-growing wolf. If he eats the arm, he'll get bigger, and then he'll just be able to get out of the chains.
Fenrir was successfully bound, and Tyr's hand was bitten off, while the other gods laughed. And that's how the merciful Tyr got his nickname the One-Handed God, who in God of War is always depicted with both hands still intact, thanks to Loki's children not being born yet.
People really loved him, huh?
Aye. The god of war, but one who fought for peace.
But the God of War writers still harness Tyr's merciful nature to design a new legacy that shines like a lighthouse in the darkness for both Kratos and Atreus. On the Jormungandr mural, Tyr is seen positioned in the center, surrounded by the Midgard serpent, the 9 realms, and some runes. The 4 runes that surround Tyr translate into mercy, truth, peace, and unity. And it's these 4 pillars that Tyr stands upon as he tries to unite the races and bring peace to the realms.
Had a reputation for being heroic and lawful, using his power and knowledge to stop wars rather than start them.
So there are good gods.
Once in a moon, it's been known to happen, yes?
But the reverse polarity of Tyr's open-handed nature is the controlling path of the Allfather Odin. Much like Kratos, Odin is a character trapped inside his own grisly cycles of fate, and while only ever seen as a figure riding one of Loki's other monster children, the 8-legged horse Sleipnir, Odin's foreboding presence can be felt all throughout the journey as he leaves behind trails of destruction and death on his search for ways to reroute his fate.
Fate's a tricky thing, lad. And Odin's just arrogant enough to think he can get the best of it.
Fate is another lie told by the gods. Nothing is written that cannot be unwritten.
On that, brother, you and the Allfather may just agree.
Odin attempting to change his fate is consistent with the Eddas, as the prophecies predict that it will be Fenris Wolf who brings forth Odin's ultimate doom during Ragnarok, whose role has now been replaced by the Giants in the wake of his removal.
He's convinced the Giants hold the key to changing his fate when Ragnarok comes. They are the Aesir's oldest enemies, after all, and it's their army that's supposed to do him in the end.
On the Jormungandr shrine, fate is predestined is spoken over all these events, and it's this idea of an unchangeable destiny that pushes Odin to use his godhood for ill, exploiting Tyr's truthful nature into gaining access to the Giants, whose entire race is then wiped out at the hands of Thor and his hammer.
Odin's scared of dying, supposed to die from giants, sends Thor's assassin to kill the giants, uses Tyr to find out where the giants are. That's why there's no giants in the God of War.
Of course, the idea is control. Control of the future, control of his fate. He'd control every realm of every land in every world if he could. Every potential pocket of resistance, he seeks to eliminate.
He should pay for what he said about mothers.
I said no.
But we're gods. We can do whatever we want.
What are you doing?
This is a much better knife than mother's.
From Odin and Tyr, Modi and Magni, Brock and Sindri and Balder and Freya, everyone's reinvented legacies are all used as projections of what the future can look like, depending on the decisions Kratos makes here in the present. In fact, God of War's entire reinvented mythological world, from all of its broken relationships, cycles of destruction, and stories about control, is a world designed to constantly remind Kratos of the world he comes from, and to ultimately be a world that Kratos must reject in order to be truly free from his past.
I do not like kids. I'm terrified of having a kid because I feel like they're psychopaths. Not to say that Atreus is the average kid. Obviously, most kids don't murder. But the way he delivered that line, whoever that kid voice actor is, phenomenal. Terrified me.
Nobody cared about him anyways. What's the difference?
There are consequences to killing a god!
Why? How do you know? How do you know?
Watch your tone, boy.
Whatever.
But in order to rise above it, Kratos must look his history directly in the face.
Brother, look out!
And this has been the role Atreus has taken on from the very beginning, in perhaps God of War's greatest reinvention of all. While the absence of Loki is used to guide Kratos to the precipice of true inner transformation, in the end, the push that sends him over the edge is the presence of Loki, through Atreus.
No! You broke the gate! That was our only way to Jotunheim!
Without the exciting, unstable, flawed figure of Loki, there could be no change in the fixed order of things.
Let go!
Calm down, boy. You are not ready for this.
I'm ready.
Boy,
And here I thought my family was fucked up.
No!
What did you do?
The Viking spirit concludes as Daniel McCoy writes in regards to the ceaseless development intrinsic to myth. The best way to stay true to the Norse myths and religion is to continue to reinvent them for one's own time and place.
Ooh.
And so just how the Vikings used Loki to shake up the natural order of their cosmos.
I know the guy's name is Loki. It's the first sentence I heard that I understood it as like, I'm Loki trying to shake it up.
And so just how the Vikings used Loki to shake up the natural order of their cosmos, the God of War team also used him to shake up theirs, harnessing Loki's unstable and flawed nature to shake up the unshakable disposition of Kratos. While the Loki in the Eddas is far from the compassionate Loki in God of War, the writers do stay true to Loki's catalyst nature and reinvent him to be the weapon needed to turn their protagonist around. During his spiral of rebellion, Atreus shapeshifts into a mirror reflection of Kratos, reflecting back to truth that this world of misery has been the foundation that Kratos has built his life upon. And so by saving Atreus from following in his footsteps, Kratos really saves himself.
Boy?
I'm here!
Here for the first time in the story, Atreus isn't rebuked for falling short of Kratos, but for becoming too much like him.
You will listen to me and not speak a word. I am your father, and you, boy, are not yourself. You are too quick to temper. You are rash, insubordinate, and out of control. This will not stand. You will honor your mother and abandon this path you have chosen. It is not too late.
But we're gods. We can do whatever we want.
Turn away, boy.
It wasn't me. I couldn't have done that.
Do not dwell on those thoughts. Not here.
Sure enough,